So both socioeconomic classes are doing what they think is going to help their children be most successful regarding their language usage. However, they're trying to achieve this goal in completely different ways. So as far as the impact on standard English from Spanglish, we have a multitude of Spanish words that we've adopted into English. Words such as siesta, savvy, and breeze. Breeze surprised me, actually. I did not realize that breeze was borrowed from Spanish. And of course, there's a multitude of Spanish, Mexican, Hispanic food that Americans love, such as chili, tomato, avocado, taco, burrito, etc., etc. Also, there are many music artists who use Spanglish in their music, and many authors who use it in their books as well. And I've watched several TV shows that also have Spanglish used throughout. Whatever your target audience is, if your target audience speaks Spanglish, of course you're going to want to use that in your music and your books and your TV shows and movies and that sort of thing. So, there are many negative connotations of vernaculars. I've already touched on that a little bit. But people often perceive things that are unfamiliar to them or different than what they're used to negatively. Many times those who use different vernaculars are viewed as unintelligent or uneducated. Rebecca S. Wheeler, she's the author of the book The Workings of Language. She argues that those using African American vernacular English are not unintelligent, but are using a different form of language altogether. And I think it could be argued the same for each of the vernaculars that I've mentioned in this presentation so far. Rebecca Wheeler examines how that this is a political issue because it is addressing language that is a language that's closely related to another language that's considered of higher prestige. Most standard English speakers do perceive AAVE as like a sloppy or poorly spoken version of standard English. They think that it's got numerous grammatical and pronunciation errors, or that it's just irrelevant, that it's street slang spoken by the urban underclass. This is absolutely untrue, and Rebecca Wheeler set out to prove this theory as incorrect in her book. There's also a journal article that I have linked in my works cited called Aloofness from Spanish Influence in Texas English, written by Janet B. Sawyer. It explains how the Spanish influence on Texas English specifically is not as strong as researchers would assume that it would be due to the aloofness that the locals have toward immigrants. So when you have the locals who they don't like the immigrants, they don't want to be around them, they will purposely do everything that they can do to make sure that their language is not being influenced by said immigrant's language. So there's going to be this aloofness from the influence the vernacular might have had on the native language otherwise. It's really interesting to think about. So in communities that have a large population of bilingual individuals, the bilingual population's first language typically has an impact on the native language of the communities. But in more refined sociological theory, the presence of speakers of a foreign language does not always imply a persistent foreign influence on the language. So that's basically what I was explaining with the lack of influence on standard English in Texas from the Spanish-speaking immigrants. But if you get nothing else out of this entire presentation, I want you to remember that speakers of other vernaculars are not uneducated. They are not unintelligent. So now that we know some reasons for the negative connotations of vernaculars, let's look at some ways to combat these negative connotations. How to change people's perspective of various vernaculars. First of all, I think that starting in the American education system, teachers should be teaching students that those who speak different dialects from them are not uneducated or unintelligent, that they are simply different. That would be a good place to start. But also, I believe it would be important as well to educate the masses. So, not just our students in schools in the public education system, but everyone on this statement by Rebecca S. Wheeler. Dialects and languages are, in fact, the same kinds of thing. Dialect does not mean a marginal, archaic, rustic, or degraded mode of speech. Linguists never say things like, that is just a dialect, not a language. Rather, they refer to one language as a dialect of another. If we can get that across to the masses, then we can start to combat some of these negative connotations of vernacular. I hope you enjoyed this presentation today. Thank you for taking your time out to listen. Thank you. Have a great day.